on V for Vendetta. Okay, so where does the group want to start?
With V.
Okay. What'd you say? What was interesting?
Very narcissistic.
Okay.
His,
He thinks that he's being a hero, but he's just evil fighting with another version of evil.
Okay.
Very grandiose sense of self.
Yeah.
Of that.
I think that's fair.
Impose his trauma on Edie.
What's that?
Is it impose his trauma on Edie?
Mm-hmm.
I think he thinks that his trauma did him so good that people now have to go through that trauma to get to the point where he's gotten. So he's actively inducing trauma in her. And yeah.
I don't think his intentions are terrible, but the way he's doing it is just not morally right.
Yeah, it's he has a good sense of morality. His morality is the opposite of what everyone else is. So in his mind it's the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
He also doesn't have really an identity. He refuses. I mean, some of that might just be shame from his disfigurement, but he doesn't go by a name other than V. I don't know if that's because he forgot his identity or it just doesn't mean anything to him anymore. He kind of explained he's not really a man anymore. He's an idea.
Mm-hmm. Where does the name V come from?
From his cell number.
Yeah, I mean, so if we are then to take this literally, and that his identity is his cell number, his imprisonment, what might that tell you?
His entire association of his identity is just the imprisonment and the
Yeah,
torture.
in terms of what happened to him, right? He identifies himself, his sense of self and self-worth has everything to do with his imprisonment and maybe even the reason why he was imprisoned. And that's taken on his persona. And then he wears the mask as that Jungian persona, portraying that mask to the world.
The guy talking.
Yeah.
In his mouth.
Yeah. Unfortunately, let me ask in the form of a question. What would you like to know more about to really begin to tease this out regarding what we just identified? Identity of oneself.
I guess why he was captured, specifically, because they showed some of the other prisoners and reasons why they were captured by the government, but they didn't really. At least I don't know if I just don't remember it, but I don't think they explained his actual backstory. It was just starting from the point that he was taken from, imprisoned and then escaped.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Not only would that be very helpful, but I think rather intuitive. There's no way you can convince me we're going to get through a 1-hour psychiatric interview and not inquire about that. I mean, how disinterested of a physician must you be if you didn't inquire about that, right? So, most definitely. What else? Yeah, and more specific about that. So, what not only causation, ideology, but what else would that established baseline of a background provide us?
Mental history?
It's along the right track. Whether or not the current behavior is a change from previous functioning. Because they should create two sequels. One in which the background is different, right? That is, normal kid, like playing ball on the other side of the white picket fence kind of thing. And then we see this. So the conclusion to draw here as a clinician is that what we are currently observing is not only a change from previous functioning, but the trigger or the impetus for the behavior was the imprisonment. On the other hand, we could have a sequel in which we're provided the background that he was the exact same person, and our clinical suspicion is far different in that context. I mean, we can't. I mean, we really would de-emphasize the role of the imprisonment there, right? So that's something we're going to really want to see. And this, in psychiatry, office-based practice especially, establishing timelines is paramount to understanding why your patient is thinking and behaving the way they are. We really don't get that much, do we? I mean, we see the imprisonment, or at least flashes back to it, and therefore we can assume that he was operating, God bless you, at a level of functioning that was quite different prior to that, but that's an assumption. We'd want to verify that. Yeah, I mean, similarly, what happens if he was even more grandiose prior to? You know, it's going to change our clinical suspicions significantly. Other observations, V.
I kind of find it interesting because, like, with the whole how it opens up with like the setting and everything, it kind of gave like 1984 vibes from like George Orwell and stuff like that. But the whole dystopian society, kind of like how it like reflects on like how everyone sees certain things and everything. So I thought that was kind of like interesting to think about.
Yeah, and I'm really interested to hear your perspective on that, as much as that relates back to Evie, right? Because, and maybe we'll use this as a segue. You know, we have this heroine, this protagonist, and she's got this unique relationship with V. Clearly absent a father figure, a paternalistic role model, and it's kind of juxtaposed against Big Brother, right, where there's that paternalistic or over paternalistic culture, and we see that. You brought it up before in terms of there being the bad guy and the other bad guy. Both are the only things that Evie has when it comes to a role model, right? That which is the system and that which is the individual, which is a nice metaphor for mental health, right? And the impact on people's behavior. More on Evie. What else do you say?
She's like a blind follower. I feel she's in blind fear. Like you said, both the bad guys. I feel like she's just going along with. I think she was on the compass, obviously, but like she's just blindly following whatever she can. Maybe because of the father figure that was missing.
Talk to me more about blind follower. What's the motivation behind this?
There's no one to tell her what's right or wrong. And I don't think she has a mind of her own. I think she's also being forced into a lot of the choices that she's had to make. So.
Also, in their like brainwash, do you think that this is the right way to go about stuff? It's not like they're intentionally trying to be like, I'm following this person. It's, oh, I have to because this is the way of the way to be.
She feels very, not paranoid, but I just think she's very scared.
Scared, maybe hypervigilant. I'm not sure she isn't paranoid. How much of this is the direct result of her having been attacked? Again, we really don't know much about Evie prior to that scene. And I think our medical opinion pertaining to this particular character would be significantly different if her past developmental history was absent of or equitable to all the behaviors we're seeing post assault, right? Because if there's evidence that she was a completely different person prior to having been assaulted, we can make a little bit more sense as to why she quote unquote blindly follows V. And he's the protector, right? This is where we get the Jungian archetypes, right? So, brief tangent. What are the Jungian what are archetypes?
They're like the personalities that people have.
Yeah.
Main ones.
Right. The idea comes literally from Carl Jung, who had a psychological theory that was very similar to Freud's, but is best known in how it differentiated from Sigmund Freud, where in addition to the personal unconscious, which is what Freud focused on, we have a collective unconscious, which is ancestral, right? So we inherit the memories from our ancestors. And the topography of the collective unconscious includes archetypes, these symbols and motifs that are handed down from generation to generation. The archetypes themselves are usually categorized as major archetypes, which you're all tested on, and minor archetypes, which are rarely tested, but in some contexts could be just as important, especially when trying to understand film. So, for scholastic reasons, let's start with the major archetypes. What are the major Jungian archetypes? Right? So this is new. This is not one that was tweaked from Freud. This is brand spanking new, that we all have a male and female side to us. For males, the anima, or the female side, is predominant unconsciously, and the opposite holds true for females. The animus is the motivating force with regard to that major archetype, anima or animus. What else?
Shadow?
Yeah, right. A Jungian psychologist would disagree with how oversimplistically I'm going to say this, but the shadow archetype is very similar to the Freudian id, right? It's the base instincts that operate unconsciously and satisfy the biological needs. Freud really didn't get too much into this, but Jungian theory really does, and that is the shadow is as much creator as it is destroyer. Like, we need our shadow in terms of having that creative sense of self, and you can't create without destroying. So there's equal parts to this. It's not just dark, right? And I don't know if the Freudian id really had that concept. But Jungian theory definitely does. Any others?
So it's like the shadow the more suppressed version of...
They're all unconscious.
Like the dark side.
Yeah, they're all unconscious. One more? Yeah, not really an archetype, but certainly the conscious part. We should probably talk about the persona. Again, kind of new. In Freudian theory, neo-Freudians kind of expanded on the concept of the ego to give it some conscious awareness. True Freudians, no, right? The ego was unconscious. But from the neo-Freudians, we get the ego psychologists who impart conscious awareness to the ego, and that is very similar to the persona in Jungian theory. So not really an archetype, but certainly a construct of one's personality, and it's that aspect of our personality that does have some conscious awareness. In addition to all of the above, we have the minor archetypes, and there's just too many to review, but I would strongly suggest, if you really wanted to nerd out, anytime you're either assigned a film, and especially if you go see something in the movies, get your favorite link to these minor archetypes, a quick read, like a quick 5 or 10 minute read prior to jumping in your car going to the theater. You will experience the movie much differently because you'll see these recurrent themes in every single plot, irrespective of genre, in terms of those minor archetypes. They come out in characters all the time. It's kind of fun to do. And if you don't want to nerd out, you got to take my word for it. Getting back to Evie. What else did you say?
She seemed very quick to not forgive me, but kind of understand the motivations behind his, torture essentially of her, which I thought was very interesting, especially because her initial reaction was so severe that I expected like a longer time in between right after versus kind of her moving past it and being like, oh, I get it, basically. So.
Yep. Any thoughts as to why?
I still think this continues on from like her like just being brainwashed her whole life, so she just has like the mentality of like what's like imposed on me is like being imposed for a reason and it's right, and she's like she tries her best to like accept and understand it rather than like question it, because towards the end she saw V as like an equal, like going from being kidnapped to that and like carrying on his like
She's very submissive. She just submits to anything.
Any other insights?
Talking about like after she, like when she forgives him after he like puts her through the torture. I guess, I mean, from my perspective, I was like, I think she finally came to terms with the fact that while he did put her through all of that trauma, it ended up helping her, and she realized that now she's not free to deny anymore. She would rather stand for what's right than, you know, save her life, but so.
And we've seen this theme in films before, where you put an individual through that torture and they come out a different person. That's the whole Saw franchise, right? I mean, you don't really appreciate life until you face death. You come through it, and you solve one of Jigsaw's traps, and you're just a changed person. Just ask Amanda, right? Whether that's true or not is very debatable, but at least it works for film or in film. So we've seen this before, right? It's Deadpool, right? As a metaphor, very similar. He only found his superhero strength with a near-death experience. So here we go again with this trope. But there might be even more to it. And I think it has everything to do with the culture she's in. I mean, what are her options? Either she follows him and remains subordinate, or she doesn't. She defies him, and she becomes her own woman in this culture that she will remain subordinate. So I'm not really sure there's much of a choice, and I don't know if we really would put too much into the fact that after being tortured, she stays with him. I mean, I don't know what the other option is.
I think like I agree with like, yeah, I guess if you put someone in like a life or death situation, they're gonna come out of it having a completely different perspective on life. But I wouldn't say that she came out of it stronger. She just came out of it like just warping into him. Because if you did come out of it stronger, you would still have a changed perspective on life, but you wouldn't you would be like, yeah, this is not like she like completely agreed, like, yes, this benefited me, but it should be like, this has changed me, but not in the way he wanted it to change me.
Yeah.
Very malleable.
Yeah.
Yeah. In forensic psychology and psychiatry, that is a focus of clinical suspicion, of clinical interest. We went to the National Pop Culture Association conference in New Orleans. I don't know, did you get to pop into that didactic or that presentation when that one person deep dived every Saw in so it was pretty remarkable. This person just totally nerded out and watched every single Saw film and did a body count, testing this theory. How many people did Kramer actually imprison and torture? How many actually survived? And of those survivors, how many actually came out of it better? Versus Amanda Young, who does come out of it, but it's actually worse. And the numbers are consistent with the medical literature, and that is, this theory is wrong. Right? This idea of a near-death experience gives one the new lease on life, and they come out improved, is not supported in the medical literature, and it certainly and consistently was not supported in this particular deep dive of the film series or franchise Saw. So it's a pretty remarkable presentation, but it's exactly what you were saying. Sure, they could come out of it. We doubt that it's better. That's very consistent with literature. Yeah. And sorry.
Did you say like because of the context of like the environment and like her having to think either one way or the other, like that it's not like a representation of Stockholm syndrome?
It could be. No, it could be. This one's a little bit more complicated because with Stockholm, we can see that where you're going back to is, for lack of a better word, normal, and the individual can't. They can't make that readjustment. They, in the Stockholm syndrome case, are very likely to stay with their accoster. This is a little different, I think, but I think it still holds for the Stockholm syndrome. Yeah. What's the opposite of the Stockholm syndrome? What's the syndrome if we think that V begins to become enmeshed or compassionate with his prisoner? That's not Stockholm. It's the opposite. What is it called?
Is
Yeah, it's called the Lima, Lima syndrome. Yeah.
I've never heard of that.
It comes up on tests. It sneaks in there. The other idea I wanted to just briefly talk about that again pertains to everything we just discussed is the idea of learned helplessness, and that Evie might actually be depressed. Right. So, I mean, her affect. There might be parts of this movie that are consistent with a depressive disorder, but I think the etiology is definitely there, and that's this idea of learned helplessness. This being suppressed or oppressed, no matter what decision, which direction you go. And we focus on her interaction with V versus non-V, which then would be the government. And I'm not so sure she's going to feel any less oppressed or tortured if she were allowed to go back to her apartment. So no matter what choice she makes, she's helpless. And over time, an individual could become depressed because of that, and that process is often referred to as learned helplessness. Now, this was a study done on rats, where we saw that rats that were put in cages that allowed for a lever to turn off a mild electrical stimulus thrived. They were able to knock on that lever, turn off the stimulus, have control over their immediate environment, and they ate well, they slept well, and they did not appear depressed. On the other hand, when that lever was asynchronous with the electric shock, the outcomes were far different. The rats just gave up. Their sleep was disrupted. They didn't eat, and they died. Right? Learned helplessness. So. Other observations for Evie or anybody else in V for Vendetta?
I was also going to make the point about learned helplessness because I feel like there was like a parallel with her parents. We saw her like hiding under the bed when she was younger and they were detained. And then with Gordon, I think kind of like the same thing happened. She like hid under the bed and I think he was killed. So we kind of see that and I feel like she just becomes so used to this repeated trauma over and over again, which leaves her in that like vulnerable state, making it more likely for her to just kind of accept the torture like that V kind of imposes on her and kind of just be quick to forgive him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah. And I'm sure the writer-director used the under the bed scene repetitively to bring that home. Right. We are almost up to the top of the hour. Any final thoughts?
You can go first.
I was just wondering if there's any, like, I guess, psychological significance to V's like, obsession with using V words, like, especially when he first presented to Evie and he was just explaining, like, so many things with a bunch of different words that started with V. Like, was that meant as more of like a way to like confuse her, or do you think that was kind of based in his like obsession with like V as an identity?
I'm not sure. My real gut is that the writer-director had significant intent. I'm not so sure the character can own that. And I think what the writer-director was doing was having us as audience focused on that to draw our attention away from the fact that this may in fact be a number. Right? Because when it was revealed to just be a number, I know I was surprised. And I'm wondering how much of the vocabulary, pardon the pun, contributed to that. Right. So I think there's a major role there. I don't know if the character, in this case himself, had any real intent there. I do think they planted it as a way to just misdirect us, so that we could get the real surprise that he was a prisoner. He's just a number, and they were all Roman numerals.
Unrelated, but the like shrine for Valerie, I thought that was interesting just because I'm assuming he knew her then from the movies or something, because we are only told that he had that letter from her which he simulated with Evie's capture as well. But then there are a bunch of pictures all over his wherever and wherever he is at, with all the roses. He also symbolically presents a rose to each person of high power that he kills. So I thought that was interesting.
Mhm.
I don't know if psych related at all, but it was just, I found that interesting since he never endorses meeting her face to face.
Yeah.
But there are all these like pictures of her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anybody have any thoughts?
I guess it depends on if you believe his story of like, you know, he met her through, like, didn't really meet her, but knew her through like the letter that she was him, and if he went back when he, you know, found like artifacts of like artifacts and then figured out like who she really was, and then get that straight.
That's true. Yeah. Because I was wondering if that letter was like a pivotal moment as to how he was empowered to do everything he did after, rather than solely like be submissive in his torture, if that makes sense. So yeah.
Any reason to believe that she died in his custody? Do we know how she died?
Sorry?
Do we know how she died?
She allegedly was killed by, I'm forgetting names, but the same place that imprisoned him in the selling store.
And we only get that information from him.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, you know, there might be another reason why he's a shrine. Okay. I mean, Evie may have been one that survived. She's the chosen one, so when she survives that torture, he's the one that's on that train. There's nobody on that train beforehand, so I wonder if he's been testing these prisoners. And Evie's the first one to get through it. And that's a trope too, right? In terms of putting people through a test, and lone survivor is the one you just when you realize, oh, they made it, you realize, oh, they survived this because now they're a candidate for that, and oh, this story's horrible. The movie's great, but the story's sad, right? I'll be honest with you, I have to rewatch it with that idea in mind to see if it actually tracks. But I wonder if he's just been testing them one after the other.
Do you think he has like certain traits of maybe like obsessive compulsive personality?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of serial killers do. And I don't know if he's a serial killer. I mean, if our conspiracy theory is right, he might be. But yeah, he's got attention to detail because he has a task at hand that he really believes is culture changing.
It's his compulsion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he actually might. There's another thing too about maybe this being a test. I'm trying to think. There's something else in the movie that I think is consistent with that. Now that I think of it, now I've just lost it though. Oh yeah. What do we think the sequel would look like? If there were a sequel to V for Vendetta,
Evie becomes V.
right? Was he just finding his predecessor? His predecessor? No. Yeah, successor. Sorry, successor.
I also was confused with like the ending scene when everybody's taking off their masks, how there were people, like they showed dead people like in the crowd. So was that supposed to be like an illusion? Like
Yeah.
it wasn't, so was the whole crowd just not there?
That I don't know. But I think it just got to the idea that, you know, I am her, she is me, we are one. I think.
Even like the detective Dominic guy, like he was in there too.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
very confused by that.
That makes a lot of sense for the test part as well, because if he's trying to like make her see if she, like someone said in the beginning that he is trying to like just torture her to see if, you know, she would survive and basically become, he just wants everyone to go through it like he did to get to that same level as him.
Mhm.
And then now that someone actually did, he's just like, yeah, she's like I'm gonna adopt her, not adopt her, sorry. She's gonna be me, like when I'm gone,
You know,
and take over his like protest or whatever
legacy.
legacy.
Just- hmm? All right, we'll leave it here. We are right at the top of the hour, so we will be posting on X shortly what next week's film and Seinfeld episode are. So we'll leave it there.